Welcome back. This marks the final session of the morning, panel discussion 7, titled What's Next for Japan? Globalizing Japanese Health Tech Ecosystem. This session will be moderated by Mr. Akihisa Shiozaki, member of the House of the Representatives, Japan. Joining him on the panel are Ms. Kanoko Oishi, CEO, Mediva Inc., Mr. Robert Clare, CEO, Hekabio KK, Ms. Ulrike Schroeder, Professor, University of California, San Diego, and Mr. Sinclair Dunlop, Managing Partner, Epidyrix Capital. Now, Mr. Shiozaki, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for attending this session. We are the only thing between you and a delicious lunch today, so I hope you enjoy this session. The theme today is a very important one. What's next for Japan? Globalizing Japanese health tech ecosystem. And we all recognize that there is tremendous potential in the Japanese healthcare system. How do we make the potential fruit? So we have the company of 4 wonderful panelists today. So I will have each one do a 1-minute self-introduction, and I even have a bell for timekeeping today. All right, so let's start with you, Tomoko-san.
Hello, I'm Kanoko Oishi. I'm the founder and CEO of Mediva. Mediva is a healthcare dedicated consulting firm. And we also run our own hospitals, clinics, and nursing care facilities. So we have pilot sites, and then using that, we try to make innovation and then do consulting. We work closely with government, companies, and so some of the companies that we work with is pharmaceutical venture companies, and I am very interested in this theme that we're going to talk about today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanako-san. Next, we have Rob Clare, CEO of Hekabio, bringing a trans-Pacific lens.
Thank you very much. Rob Clare. I've been in Japan for 30 years, and I'm a great proselytizer for the benefits of Japan and entering the healthcare market here. In my career here in Japan, I've been a member of a think tank working on healthcare policy white papers. I've run a healthcare consultancy, ran a CRO, a clinical research organization, doing as a consultancy, getting overseas companies their Japanese approval clearance, and also helping with partnering to find Japanese distributors for those overseas companies. Now, at my company Hekabio, what we're doing is we are buying the Japan commercial rights and ex-China Asia Pacific rights for great innovations in medtech and pharma from around the world, US, Europe, Korea, Israel as well, and taking the opportunity to bring those innovations into Japan, ones that have a great fit for the Japanese culture, medical system, and are strongly supported by Japanese key opinion leader doctors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Next, we have Dr. Ulrike, originally from Germany. So you are an expert. You've studied in Japan and expert in Japanese innovation. The floor is yours.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Ulrike Schroeder. I'm a professor of Japanese business at the University of California, San Diego. As we just heard, I'm originally from Germany, and I've studied Japan for more than 30 years. My interest is in how a Japanese business organization, including innovation processes and so forth, are different from other systems and what the efficiency consequences of those differences are. Also in terms of the society and the trade-offs that countries make as they develop their innovation ecosystems. Thank you.
Thank you. We're all punctual today. All right. So finally, Sinclair Dunlop, are you from UK originally, and you are a global venture investor.
Thank you. Good morning. Epiderics Capital is an early-stage life science venture fund active on both sides of the Atlantic, although a lot of our investors are also from East Asia, and we have several Japanese investors in several of our funds. Our model is company building. We're the first check in, so we do a lot of university spinouts, 80% therapeutics, 20% medical devices. We are investing initially anywhere between 1 and 5 million in either sterling or dollars, and then we continue the company building process, working closely with strategic partners here in Japan who often license or they distribute the technology ultimately into the Japanese market.
All right, thank you. So as you've heard, we have a very rich background of panelists from Japan, the United States, Germany, and the UK. So we want to focus on largely two themes in our discussions today. One is, how do we make the Japanese healthcare market more attractive and accessible from global investors? And secondly, how can we support Japanese healthcare startups to scale and go global? So we'll try to touch upon both of these themes. We're going to start off with the first one. So let me start with a simple but difficult question. Why do so many global innovators still see Japan as a challenging market? This is going to go to you, Rob. We believe we have a lot of technical excellence, sophisticated customers, good IP. What's missing?
This is a very big question. So let me take one angle of that. And I'll start off with the perception overseas. So, over the years when I've been involved in getting regulatory approvals in Japan, helping with market entry, we've seen tremendous improvement at the Japanese governmental level, at the PMDA, MHLW, in terms of deregulation, pricing to favor innovations, a tremendous amount of rationalization in the process, whereby Japan has reached parity with the FDA in terms of timelines. So this is great, but not enough people know that. And so, I believe the PMDA also knows that the perception is still that Japan is difficult, opaque, we're never going to make it on our own, and therefore, even though Japan is the third or fourth largest healthcare market in the world, many companies, I don't think many companies make an active choice to avoid Japan. They just get tired with the process and don't find the right partners or the right way to get in, and they put it off until later. So this results in what we see and what we call the drug and device lag, which means that many programs are not coming into Japan until 3 to 5 years later than we believe they should. So this is the big issue. The government has done what they can. The government has done a tremendous job in rationalizing, deregulating. Now it's up to us companies, and hopefully people who are attending this session will come away with the opinion that Japan is actually more open, more transparent. Japan has very, as you might expect for anyone who's been in Japan a long time or even a short visit, the processes are very transparent and work as expected. So there's a lot of benefits to getting into Japan. There's a perception issue. In recognition of this, the PMDA has taken the initiative to set up a Washington, D.C. office in order to spread the word that Japan is open for business. Japan also has a Thailand office in order to help with the harmonization throughout Asia led by Japan, which means that once a company has a Japan clearance, they can very easily then get into the rest of ex-China, Asia Pacific.
Great. Well, Rob is very kind and polite and is supportive of the Japanese government's reform efforts. So, Ulrike, do you agree with Rob's assessment that this is the government's taking the right steps? It's a marketing issue. We don't have enough PR to let them world know that Japan has transformed. You've studied other industries as well in Japan on how we have connected or succeeded or failed in connecting with the global markets. What is your view on the Japanese healthcare market?
First of all, I agree with Rob that certainly in the United States, the last time people really looked at Japan with great attention is 30 years ago, and then they all started looking at China and so forth and so on, and so they think that Japan is what it was 30 years ago. So I completely agree with the marketing or the perception thing. I'm not sure that that's actually, the government's role to do, but there could be maybe more marketing. But I want to bring up something else, and that is, I think Japan is different, and that's not necessarily bad. So there is this idea that if Japan doesn't do it like America, Japan is behind, or Japan is bad, or something like that. And I would like to, I'd hope that we can change the mindset around that and say, well, Japan is making different trade-offs. And these trade-offs result in different outcomes. So for example, let me just give you one little one that everybody knows. We've all heard about the lost 30 years, right? Or the lost 3 decades, Japan has been stagnating. And I actually don't think that that's the right way to look at it. Certainly there were 10 bad years after the bubble period, the bubble economy burst, but then a transformation has begun. And in industry after industry, we see how the front runners, the best companies, are making big changes to their strategies. And though you might say, okay, that's fine, why did it take 20 years for Japan to make these changes? And the answer is, that was a choice. That basically, to cut a long story short, Japan traded in GDP growth for social stability and employment. And so if you look at employment data compared to the United States, Japan has been incredibly stable through, good and bad days. And that was by design. And it's changing now because we have a labor shortage coming and companies can move faster. But in any event, Japan made a different trade-off. And I'm not sure that that's a bad trade-off. It's very expensive, but I think what we see in the United States now, the innovation system in Silicon Valley has become reckless, and people are doing things that are borderly unethical, if not illegal. And that's not something that Japan would want to do. Which of these systems is better? I don't even know. And so as we accuse Japan of being slow or different or something, maybe we should take a second look and say, okay, what is the logic of this system? And how do we use that logic to be successful in this country? And I think once we get to a level where Rob understands it, or Kaneko knows how to run these clinics and offer healthcare services, I think we can find this place a very attractive and profitable place to do business in.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So, Sinclair, Rob says that reform is underway, and Ulrike says that we have social stability. You are an international investor. You've invested in multiple countries, Asia in particular. What is keeping investors from approaching the Japanese market, and how can we make change to invite them to come more to Japan?
I think that's a great question, and I think one thing to keep in mind about the global venture capital industry is that it's a very clubby game, and by clubby I mean like-minded investors stick together. There's not that much independent thinking. There's a lot of herd mentality that will kick in. Conventional wisdom is surprisingly prevalent in venture capital. And an element to that, in terms of the Japanese market being able to tap into some of those major capital flows, is to have local lead or co-lead investors. So if you're syndicating a sizable round of investment from a Kyoto or Osaka University spin-out, you're going to need some investors that are Japan-based, that are sector specialists, and that have scalable AUM. So these funds need to be bigger. They need to be led by sector specialists that have domain expertise that, like it or not, will be seen to be peer co-investors by top VCs on the West Coast or the East Coast or in various parts of Europe. This is a common challenge. It's not unique to Japan. It's unique to any, what we would call, and we like to invest in what we call over-scienced, under-ventured markets. And there's plenty of those in the US, and there's plenty of those in Europe as well. And the definition of it is where you have world-class IP sitting at a university, but for a variety of reasons, some of which may be unique to Japan, there's a struggle to translate that commercially into a fundable proposition. And so a key element, a key ingredient that I think is missing in terms of its scale. I'm not suggesting, to Ulrika's point, I'm not suggesting we need to replicate Silicon Valley. The Silicon Valley model has pros and cons, but one aspect of that model is a sufficient number of sector specialist venture capitalists who have AUM above a certain threshold. And the Japanese market doesn't have enough of that yet. I think it's moving in the right direction, but if there was any way to accelerate that, that would be hugely helpful to outside capital that really does want to deploy into the very strong science base that Japan has.
Over-scienced and under-ventured market. I think that's an important keyword that we want to take note of. So I guess what you're saying is if we can convince a Sinclair Dunlop to move to Japan and open shop here, you will lure in all your friends to come to Japan as well.
I think the exciting news is that there are a lot of pools of talent in Japan, and turning, for example, mid-career pharmaceutical executives that are in business development roles. It's not an overnight transition, but some of the best venture capitalists in the US and Europe come out of industry. They've spent 20 years developing drugs or in-licensing drugs or doing M&A around drug deals. Those individuals are in Japan. It wouldn't be a huge leap to turn more of them into venture capitalists.
Thank you. Now, Kanako-san, how do you feel? You've operated hospitals and healthcare institutions in Japan. Sinclair says that there's excellent talent, IP in Japan. We often talk about the great data that we have on healthcare systems in Japan. Do you think there is a pathway that we can utilize this hidden gem within the Japanese healthcare system for broader appreciation and application in the global markets?
Well, thank you very much. The answer to your question is yes, I think there is a potential, a huge potential. In Japan, there is, as you mentioned, the national health insurance system and also nursing care insurance system, which produces a lot of data. And this data basically covers from the birth to death. And it also covers what happened in between. So can we use that data much better? The other part is there's a lot of good science. I mean, there's great science. We still have our top universities of the world, and there's a lot of good scientists, not just in the as medical doctors or pharmaceutical areas, but for example, I work closely with Osaka University, which is where I came from, and they are very strong in nuclear medicine. So there's a good nuclear physics course, and so we're producing drugs in that area. So there's a lot of science combined with good data, and if we can get the right venture capitalists, the right people to handhold and make these IT and data into real business, I think there's a lot of potential. But on the other hand, we also have to change things. There are some regulation issues. There's also some marketing issues. So there's things to change, but there is great potential.
Thank you. Sinclair earlier mentioned that it is not necessary that we try to replicate the Silicon Valley or the Boston ecosystem in Japan. Kanako-san, do you think it is, do you agree with Sinclair's assessment that we shouldn't try to emulate something that we often see in the United States? Should we take a different path, or is there still a lot that we try to learn from the US ecosystems?
I think the answer is kind of in between, and also really depends on the market. Pharma is basically, it's a global market and US leads it. So in order to be very successful in pharma, you really need to know how to win in the US market, whether you do it yourself or you partner with someone else or you buy, you sell it off. But other things like medical devices or medical services, and also another big thing that's coming on is software as a medical device, SAMD. So those would be a kind of a different market. And so that may be more of a Japanese type of market. So it really depends on the segment of the healthcare market, I think.
Rob, what is your view? You've been a connector of foreign IP, bringing them into the Japanese market, and you've probably seen the regulatory challenges being resolved, but still differences within the business ecosystems. If you were to make a recommendation to further policy changes in Japan, is there something that you would request to the Japanese government?
Thank you. So yes, for foreign companies considering coming into Japan, there are a number of different harmonization types of programs. My personal bias is that the best way to develop a drug or device is to think globally, and that goes for Japanese startup or overseas startup, doesn't matter. But if you, for example, if you're a US company or company based anywhere, think about Japan early on, think about it at the same time as you're thinking about the US. So consider that rather than going by the normal playbook of developing in your home country first, and then thinking about others, including Japan, why not think of a global development process, and why not harmonize with Japan? Because Japanese PMDA also loves harmonization programs. And so in most cases, we can devise a clinical and regulatory plan that involves part of it being done in home country, part of it being done in Japan, the opportunity for simultaneous submission and approval in multiple places. So we think this is the ideal. Japan still does have some particular trickiness in terms of regulation. As many will know, Japan has rationalized and will in certain cases not require early stage clinical trials in certain cases. This is great, helps to save, when we think of the difference between drugs and devices, there's this probably 3-year or so time lag between what it's going to take to get through your phase 1 and go on to the next phase. But with that eliminated, now all of a sudden you've got drug development timelines that are very similar to device development timelines. So this is great for Japan, and we encourage everyone to think of coming into Japan at the same time as you're developing in your home country. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we're migrating into the second theme now, which is how do we encourage Japanese startups to go global or achieve their full potential? And Urike, I want to ask you, you've studied a lot of different industries and different countries. I think, a lot of times, as Rob mentioned, Japanese companies try to see the Japanese market first and then go global. But we see that sometimes that takes too much time or requires a lot of adjustment in terms of going to the next level. Some other countries take a different approach, as Rob mentioned, going global directly. What have you seen in some of your studies on success models or models that have not worked so well in terms of how Japanese companies go global?
So that's a wonderful question. I think there's an incentive challenge. And I don't think it is the case that Japanese startups don't want to go global. There's a math problem and a societal challenge. And in a funny way, the fact that Japan is still, after 30 years of apparently stagnation, is still the third largest economy or fourth largest economy in the world, means that if you are a Japanese startup, you actually have a very big home market. right? And this is an aging society. Wow, lots of people need, so in a way, it's actually rational to focus on Japan first. If you're a startup in a smaller European country, for instance, we had yesterday we had a fellow from Denmark, and he said Denmark is the size of Osaka, and so if you're a startup in Denmark, of course you could immediately go global, right? But as a Japanese startup, you may not. You may actually do really well staying at home, and then the second challenge is what is the return on investment of going through the trouble of doing all of this globally, and the answer is that Japanese VC also don't actually push the startups because there are limits, and these have to do with how the IPO system works in this country, how the venture system works. There are limits to the returns that startups make in this country and what they do with their funds. And so it may not actually be worth the effort. And I think it's a rational decision. So it's not so much that the startups don't want to go. It's they look at this and say, okay, what will it cost and how much will I make by starting this as a global enterprise? And so maybe if that could change in terms of how venture capital funds or incentivizes, this might change. But I can see the dilemma.
I'm curious to hear about that incentive problem. Are you seeing a difference on how successful entrepreneurs behave after they, make their first success? And
Yeah,
I don't know.
So Japan is a wonderful country, right? People are bashful and they don't want to show off their wealth. So hypothetically speaking, imagine there's an entrepreneur who just made $100 million, round number, and what they're going to do with this? They can go to Tokyo and buy a penthouse in Aoyama Chome or something, and then that's 10 million.
Azabudai Hills.
Oh, I'm
is where
sorry,
they all
Azabudai Hills.
live these days.
Let it be 20 million. Okay, fine. They still have 80 million left. What are they going to do with the $80 million? And if they were in Singapore or something, they could go party and show off and buy a Ferrari or whatever. But you don't do that sort of thing in Japan, of course, as everybody in this room knows. So then becoming an angel investor is also difficult. So paying for whatever reasons I'm told is not that easy. It's possible, but it's maybe not as much fun or organized as it might be in San Diego. And so paying forward is also complicated. And so in order to get that sort of metabolism going, I think it would be there's a mindset shift that has to happen. I think Sinclair has some
Yes,
ideas on
Sinclair. So, for example, startups in the UK, they could focus on the UK market first or seize global. Other countries in Asia also have that choice. Is Japan unique, or is it common among other countries as well?
So 2 quick things just on Ulrika's last point. The best thing that can be done with that 80 million, once you've bought the 20 million apartment, is you put that into 8 new startups and you do it locally. Or you start your first new fund and you put your 80 million into another fund. So this concept of serial investment, entrenching, deepening, making sticky the local ecosystem so that capital is reinvested. That's the measure of success. That's how you scale a life sciences cluster or any kind of tech innovation cluster in any geography. It's that reinvestment of the winnings and keeping it local and not allowing it, if you can, difficult to control, to go to a different geography. But on the point of other markets, to your question, as Kanoko said earlier, there's a difference here between pharmaceuticals and many other subsectors of the life sciences. The challenge in the therapeutics, traditional drug development industry, as Rob knows better than me, you can't ignore the US market. It's hard to ignore because that's the standard, rightly or wrongly, by which you're ultimately going to be measured, how the market cap of your company will ultimately develop. Your strategy has to keep an eye, if not be led by the US market, rightly or wrongly. The question is, can you do it in parallel? Can you actually develop a domestic Japanese market entry strategy, product development strategy focused on Japan in parallel with the US? Challenge with that is the resource you need on team. How deep a bench of talent, drug development talent do you need? Can you recruit them back? Can you recruit them all here? Can you do it all from Japan? And also working capital need. If you're going to pursue a platform-wide, multi-asset, multi-drug development strategy going after the biggest market, the US, as well as Japan, that takes a lot of capital. And where do you find it is the challenge.
Kanako-san, you've been advising Japanese companies, and you've been also a consultant in your career. We've listened to how the Japanese startup market's been viewed from outside. What is your view in terms of some of the pain points or challenges that Japanese startup companies face when they try to scale up or when they try to access global markets? Is there something that is still missing in terms of policy initiatives that could help them make that decision?
Yes, well, I think there's a lot of things that the government and also other companies can do. One is, a lot of times these, the startup, unless they're serial entrepreneurs, they're still new to, this business of being a startup. So they need a lot of hand-holding. And in Japan, as it was mentioned in the previous discussions, pharmaceutical, healthcare, especially pharmaceutical, is a very different market. So you need venture capitalists that really understands how pharmaceutical works and how to make it successful. And that venture capitalist also needs to understand how the global market works. So not just the Japanese market, but how to make it go global. So to handhold them, and also they need to have a lot of money. Japanese venture capitalists, they tend to be smaller than the global ones, and especially they're very, very risk averse. Some of them are, they're like subsidiaries of banks, and they still have that bank type of culture where there's very, very, they try to say, okay, have you cleared this? Have you cleared that? Have you cleared that? And so, we need people who really understand how to make it work and also have the money. And the government, of course, they can put in money, but also try to support and foster that segment, and then to match it with the right people who have the IP and want to, be successful.
Thank you very much. I think I'm very pleased with all the comments that I'm hearing, because last year when I was the parliamentary vice minister for the Ministry of Health, we had an initiative putting together a policy package to support Japanese healthcare startups. And the recurring theme of the absence of an advisor or supporter, a venture capitalist that can connect the Japanese healthcare system with the global markets is something that we tried to address as well. Along the lines of some of our policy proposals, we are planning to develop and run a visiting program that will invite global VCs in the healthcare space to come to Japan, meet academia, meet the startups, and meet the investor community in Japan, so that they can perhaps partner up with someone. They can start exploring opportunities to start an operation in Japan, or recognize the underventured talent here in Japan. One of the also very attractive programs, and then I think, Rob, you also know about this program a lot, is the AMED Certified Venture Support Program, which is basically, it's an amazing program. If you're a certified VC, you invest $1 into a startup, the government is going to give you $2 as well. So that triples your investment money. Rob, how do you see this certified venture capital program? Is this going to be attractive enough to invite global VCs into the Japanese market? Is it going to be a success for the Japanese healthcare startups?
So I certainly hope so. I think it's a great program. There's a lot of funding available. What we hear from the insiders is that they believe they're not going to be able to spend all the money that they've got allocated. in this program. Not from the startups. The startups have no problem spending the money. I'm talking about AMED itself. So, you know, with this, there are opportunities also for overseas VCs to come in and get certified under that program. It really helps them to de-risk their investments if the programs that they invest in can also get the AMED granting. It's an amazing opportunity. What we would like to see is, and we talk about, okay, how do we build and nurture the unicorn life sciences company in Japan? And this is a big issue. I think the AMED program is part of it. The deregulation and rationalization is another part of it. Certainly we need more deep-pocketed VCs in country, that's for sure. And I think it's going to take some time, but what we also see as missing right now is the ability to find the talent to operate the companies and nurture them to the next level. What we see, and hopefully this is just a stopgap measure or a temporary measure, but a lot of times the funded with Japanese government money funding going into startups, which then actually do most of their development in the U.S. So we would see this as hopefully a temporary measure to trying to build that Japanese unicorn and not turn it into another expatriated U.S. company, which to me would be a disappointing result. So we really, I think there's a lot of different ways to think about how we can improve the ecosystem here, policy, venture, issues with underwriting and how the Tokyo growth market operates is another one. But I think Japan is moving in the right direction. I think one of the big issues still remaining is how to identify that talent pool, not only among the VCs with sector expertise, as you had mentioned, Sinclair, but on the operator side as well.
So Rob raises a very interesting point, and this is probably a question for you, DK. But we spend all this money trying to nurture Japanese startups to go global. They go global, and they become a non-Japanese company. Is this a good use for taxpayers' money? Is this how do we address this dilemma in terms of helping startups scale up? To you.
So there are two aspects to this. One is, I'm a professor at a university, and one of the things we grapple with is, can you teach entrepreneurship? And there are certain aspects to entrepreneurship that I think are innate. Some are, being able to take a calculated risk and all of that we cannot teach. What we can teach is how to prepare a pitch deck and how to present it. And so the how-tos, those are tools. They can be taught, they can be learned. What I observe, actually, my answer to your taxpayers' money question is actually it's very true that Japan is exceedingly generous with funds available for startups, right? And there have been so many government programs, ministry after ministry, and various pots of money kind of sloshing around, and yet what we see is that there's this metabolism is still sort of slow, and I think one of the reasons may be that the supply, sort of the companies and how they present, as Sinclair just put it, for better or for worse, will be held up to the standard that we teach at the university, and there is in every single pitch deck there has to be a money slide. And I mentioned earlier, money is a thing that maybe people in Japan don't like to talk about, or how to get rich and so forth. But for a VC investor, there has to be a money slide, right? And so we'll have pitches later in the afternoon. Let's see how many of them actually have a fully developed market sizing money slide. And so without that, I don't think a VC would invest, even if it's maybe complicated, if there's insurance involved, or sort of how this will be reimbursed. Yes, it gets very complicated. But what the investor will want to see is how long until money will come in and how long until I get out of here, right? So maybe.
Yeah, if I can, I mean, I think from the policy perspective, the three magic ingredients are talent, IP, and capital. Japan has the IP. If it doesn't have enough of the talent, can it be trained or recruited? And then capital, which would be an aspect of AMED. What other options are there to attract, to complement perhaps the AMED program? For example, could DBJ be allocated more capital to put into managers, including ex-Japan managers, but as other countries have done, that capital must stay in Japan. I mean, quite a number of countries have done that very successfully. Ireland, for example, in the medtech sector, 20 years ago, the Development Bank of Ireland took a lot of Irish taxpayer money and gave it to US GPs and said, you must open an office in Dublin, you must have a partner here from whatever country in the world you originate. You're coming to Ireland and you're deploying that capital in Ireland. That could be one route to getting more capital into the system here, because you need multiple shots on goal. The number of, to the point on supply for the AMED program, you need a significant number of companies being developed at scale in Japan, because you will lose some of them. Some of them, to your point, will be acquired. That's the nature of the beast. There's nothing we can do about that. But if you have 24 scalable, multiple potential billion-dollar drug development companies in Japan, some will stay. And the key is to have some that will stay. Some leaving as success stories or being acquired as success stories is just fine, because that, consistent with the AMED program's goals, that validates the success of the Japanese system, and it puts Japan on the map. I mean, in drug development right now, as Rob knows, there's a lot of hype and a lot of talk about China. There's not enough talk about Japan as a place to develop drugs. But if you get the industry thinking that you can develop a world-class drug in Japan from scratch all the way to commercialization, that will bring capital, but that takes time. So we won't know if the AMED program has worked for probably 10 years. So the question is, in parallel, what else can you be doing?
Do you face similar dilemmas in the UK or in Germany of
UK
heavily
for sure.
subsidized companies being bought out by foreign
So the British,
companies?
The British government last week gave another £4 billion to the British Business Bank. The British Business Bank is the closest thing that the UK has to a sovereign investor. And a big part of the policy challenge that the UK government is trying to change is to get more capital into startups and to entrench their growth, to improve the stickiness, to build the great British biotech and keep it in the UK. So the policy challenge is global. This is not in any way a uniquely Japanese challenge.
So, but we can't oblige them to stay in Japan or the UK.
That's why it's
so
a
as you
numbers
mentioned,
game. Yeah.
you need a certain size, and some will go out and make their name, but some will stay.
And that's a success, because even the ones that go out, you're making money from them. That capital, that's still a win. That's still a victory, because that capital gets recycled locally.
This is very interesting. We had a similar discussion when we were designing the policy white paper last year. The favorite anecdote that we often drew was baseball, right? If you had a Shohei Ohtani playing in your high school team, how successful will you be in trying to keep him to play in national baseball in Japan? He's going to be at some time found out and play in Major League Baseball. You can't oblige him to stay here. But Shohei Ohtani playing in the Major League raises the publicity of the Japanese baseball level. And there will be more recruiters coming into Japan and more great players coming out of Japan. So I think we can't keep everyone in Japan, but in the hope that those that will go out will bring back benefits to the Japanese economy.
Just briefly, so Germany just won the World Cup, right? Not in soccer, Moderna, so there's it may only take one big case, And then everybody says, whoa, they developed the vaccine in Germany. Yeah, we've always known that the German universities were great. We've always known that the startups were great, but we didn't have. And now everybody's saying, oh, I want to be there. Right? I'm not going to go to Silicon Valley. I'm going to stay here. I can do this here. So it may actually, all it, your recipe may take one big shot on.
Yeah,
one
but to get one
score.
Moderna, you probably need 20 shots on goal.
That's right, at least.
Yeah.
Kanako-san, so in terms of you advise hospitals and others, we've talked a lot about pharma, but how about other industries like medical devices or elderly care or SAMD? Are there different recipes that are necessary for those companies to scale or go global or become, like even in the elderly care industry, they're not even sustainable in the domestic market. So what is missing here within the Japanese market in terms of the non-pharma startups?
Okay, let's take elderly care as an example. I think Japan has great potential in elderly care because, first of all, they have the system, and next, as I said, there's supposed to be the data, and there's a lot of people who are interested. So Japan is in the leading edge of the elderly care market, but the innovation does not necessarily start in Japan. I think the big issue is that people who are working right now in the nursing care industry, they are so focused into the Japanese market, and they're so focused in how to win the Japanese system, and therefore, in the Japanese system of elderly care, basically it's nursing care, insurance was developed in the year 2000. In the year 2000, internet was not really, not everyone had internet. There was no smartphone, there was no AI. So the infrastructure has completely changed, but the system is still, developed and is run in the way it was developed in the year 2000. So I think what we need to make elderly care successful is to bring in really new ideas. And new ideas can come from really new startup people who does not really understand or have not been working in the elderly care market. And that can be combined with people from outside. Recently, we've had people coming in from Taiwan who have the technology and very high interest in elderly care, but a different look at it, saying that how can they make elderly care much efficient using their IT? And they want to enter the Japanese market, work with the Japanese people, because we have good services and we also have good technology. So combining with foreign companies in Japan to make innovation and then take that together to other countries like Europe or United States is like a different way of winning the global market.
I'm glad you brought up some of the technical developments that could change and address our most toughest social challenges in aging society. And I think we haven't talked about AI at all enough in this panel. I just met a CEO from a US startup last week. His company basically automates a phone call from an AI system to a patient's cell phone. And it gives a periodic check-in on, Rob-san, how was your surgery yesterday that you had at your stomach? Is it hurting at all? Did you take your blue pills this morning and the red pills this morning? What's your temperature like? Are you feeling well? Did you go to the baseball game that you talked to me yesterday in the phone call? And the performance outperforms every human nurse making that assessment. So this is some amazing developments happening in AI. But what was most striking is that the CEO said, we have this system running very successfully in the United States. We made a Japanese language version, and it only took 7 hours to do that, because AI can automate that voice language version into Japanese in a matter of hours. So there's a question, open question to all of you. Are the boundaries of healthcare services just becoming lower with AIs? And is there a new frontier for Japanese companies to, go global beyond the language barrier much more easily? Or is it just more competition coming in from global companies into the Japanese healthcare system? How is AI going to change the dynamics of the industry in the coming future? Rike, you picked up the mic.
Well, I'll take the first shot and then let the others follow. Disruptions are opportunities for business, right? And so this is a mega disruption, and some of this disruption plays into long-standing Japanese strength. So, for example, it's not healthcare, but monozukuri, the Toyota production system, Industry 4.0, right? So how things are made, and that actually might play into medical devices in the sense that Japan has a long-standing strength in figuring out how to make things, make them smaller, make them better, make them, that sort of thing. And I visited recently. There's a startup incubator accelerator here in Osaka, called Quintbridge, run by NTT West, and there are lots and lots and lots of startups working on the robotics aspects of that. And we know in medical devices as well that there are some Japanese companies that have already used robotics and AI for a number of medical devices. So I think this is an opportunity that may open up a whole new avenue for Japanese startups in the tangible sort of area of healthcare with the devices. And I'm thinking that disruptions this disruption may actually come at a very fortunate time for Japan, because there are lots of startups now, that there is an energy and a vibe around becoming an entrepreneur in this country that we have not seen in a while. And so I'm actually quite positive on the opportunities, and think there are already a lot of startups at the university level, and also mid-career people starting up in that field.
I don't have much to add to that. I mean, for us, we look at AI primarily through its contribution potentially to drug development. Rob probably looks at the same, but from a data crunch, from a acceleration of processing point of view, absolutely transformative. I think there's still some debate amongst traditional drug developers as to whether you can develop a drug all the way to the patient on the basis of AI. I'm not sure there's a consensus around the near-term feasibility of that yet. But I think it's a huge opportunity, to Ulrike's point, on lower barrier for entry. The more rapid the rate of innovation, the flatter the playing field. And I think that could absolutely be a big opportunity for Japan.
One of the big challenges for that company to enter into Japan was whether or not the system could get access to the electronic medical records of hospitals. Because without that access, without that API connection, the AI is not going to be able to get real-time information of the patient. We often talk about how great the data, the healthcare data is within Japan, but perhaps the usability of the data is dampened because the data is fragmented or formatted in a way that is difficult to process by AIs. Are you seeing changes in that? This is an issue we've been tackling for decades. Is this going to get resolved anytime soon?
Well, it is a big issue. It is a huge issue, and I'm a member of the Japan's deregulation committee, and we have tackled that issue, and also other parts of the government has tackled the issue. The issue is very complicated, and well, first of all, when I said that there is really good data, it does mean that there are fragments of good data, but is it in a usable form? It's not yet. So we need to change the regulation, and we also need to change the culture of the people who are using it, or the people at the hospital who's producing the data, so that we can, we can think that this is something we can make it into something usable, and also think more positively about using that data. And there's also many things that even at the ground level, for example, the company that you mentioned, of course, they probably need to have access to the electronic medical record system, but a lot of the big hospitals have the electronic medical record system, but the smaller hospital, more than half still does not have that. So we have that infrastructure problem. And also, even if we do have the EMR system, the API is not open. So one of the things that I think, one by one, we're trying to change the policies, to change the regulation, and changing how business is done. But one important thing that needs to be changed is that the API needs to be open, so that everyone who has brought in a good AI system can access that. And if Japan does not do that, even if we have good data, or even if we have good AI technology, it's not going to be used. Therefore, we're going to lose in the global battle.
Thank you. So you've all been very good with your time. So I'm going to ask you for a 1-minute closing remark, perhaps with one recommendation for the Japanese market, either outbound or inbound, how to make the Japanese healthcare tech ecosystem more globally and successful. So let's start with Rob.
Okay, I have two suggestions. One suggestion for how Japan's regulation can entice even better access to the market. And that would be to have even better transparency on pricing for medical device, for SAMD, because I think company effort in coming into Japan, you need to convince the company to come in to be interested in Japan. If there were a government interface that could actually give more clear guidance on at the time when a company is considering, should I do a very extensive clinical trial for this product, or should I go for the fast track? Well, then if there were a mechanism for the government to tell you, if you do this and you provide us with this amount of data, health economic benefit, then we're going to give you this for your reimbursement pricing. But if you did this on the fast track, then it's going to be this. And everybody can then have some confidence about building the economic model. I think that would help a lot. That's a big jump, I think. And then on the helping outbound folks, I think we just need more standard mentoring. So Ulrika had mentioned about that, but I think a lot of, there's more and more great Japanese startups now. And I think those of us recognize that. We'd like to help them. They need mentoring. They need the hard aspects like capital, et cetera, but they also just need coaching and how to do their connection with overseas peers, pitch decks, et cetera. If the government could provide more support for that, I think it would be really helpful.
Thank you. Ulrike?
So I would hope that that Japan can stop trying to be like Silicon Valley, which is it's a wonderful place in its own right. It's very successful. It also has a lot of downsides, but it's not possible. So if Japan tries to be like Silicon Valley and, we need more unicorns, that will never happen because the stock market here doesn't work that way. It just is not in the cards, and it'll only create negativity and sort of a sense of failure. We're not good enough and we're not living up to the global standard and whatnot. I would hope that Japan could actually be confident enough to just stop that and say, we have our own strengths and our own weaknesses. We make our own trade-offs. We want to be a better system. Let's create it, right? But stop saying, we don't have as many unicorns as Palo Alto. I don't think you would want that. It comes with a lot of negativity that Japan would not, negative sides that Japan would not like. to have. So be more confident in your own way of doing things.
Thank you. Sinclair.
Scale up the amount of sector specialist capital that's available. The world's going to become more competitive, not less. And the government and AMED, a good example, on top of everything Rob said, is a great example of one program, but it probably needs to be complemented by other programs that are lifting the amount of capital access for entrepreneurs in Japan. And the sector specialist piece is really important. Your investors need to be sector specialists.
Thank you. And finally, Kanako-san.
Yep. Healthcare has been it's a very regulated industry, and there has not been very much change in this past 30 years. But this is a time where change has to happen. So my recommendation is think innovation and be brave about it, because the wind is blowing in the right way and it's needed and you can be successful. So even within the sector, think innovatively and start moving in the right direction.
Well, thank you very much. Let's hear a big hand for the wonderful panelists here. I appreciate the final recommendations in particular, and I think we have a good idea to move forward with strengthening our Japanese healthcare ecosystem. Thank you very much, and enjoy your lunch.
Thank you, and let's not forget to thank our moderator, Mr. Shiozaki, for leading such a dynamic discussion.